Right. So all we've got an intimation of the call being recorded, so we're good, and we're about to start. Thank you very much for joining, and yeah, we're good to go. Right. So dive computers. We'll start with a small presentation, and it makes sense to have a discussion after the presentation because there's going to be some information that I'd like to share with all of you. This has been a really interesting topic for me to choose. There's a lot of research that went in, and I was able to speak to some really interesting people as we go along. I'll tell you more. So this is me. Almost all of you know me, and this is me basically. I'm Vishwanath, just for people who haven't heard of who I am on the recording. And yeah, dive computers. So dive computers are devices which actually give you real-time decompression information for your dive, and they've been around for about maybe 60 years now. The initial ones came up from in 1957, and we'll just go on as we'll talk about that as we go on. So this is how I'm going to cover the presentation, and we'll have a question answer session at the end and discussion, so to say. So in 1957, the first computer was the Foxborough, which was built by Foxborough for the U.S. Navy. In 1951, U.S. Navy and Scripps Institute of Oceanography got together, and they decided that they needed a dive computer which would track gas onloading and offloading as real time. So basically it was meant for combat swimmers, and that's how they started this. It's a purely analog computer with a pressure chamber and a spring-loaded mechanism that didn't really work as well as it should have, as it was supposed to, and which led to the US Navy rejecting it. This was just after the US Navy tables had just started being formulated, and they were using basic air decompression tables. Again, around the 1970s, this is in between, there was something called a Decometer, which I'll show you next, but this was what Carl Edmonds, who's one of the pioneers of respiratory decompression physiology, and the Society of South Pacific Underwater Medicine Society. So this was presented in the journal in one of the articles which he wrote, and it still holds pretty true that divers place absolute faith in now not mechanical but electronic gadgetry, where you use a dive computer which is purely electronic nowadays. So going ahead, this is the SOS Decometer. SOS stands for Strumenti Cotis Scubapro, not the Save Our Souls, but pretty much Bend-o-matic, because a lot of Northeast divers, Jersey and New York, and this information I got from Bernie Chaudhary, who told me that they used to call it the Bend-o-matic in the olden days of olden days of diving. So this is a purely analog again, which had a pressure chamber, and you can see the mechanism inside. Aaron will really like this, how they made it. That it's pretty geeky, but again didn't work as well as should have, or at least as well as they had planned it. And so then, as things went on, people kept on getting bent because they weren't, the computers weren't working as well, and they were also dependent on the spring. And as most of us know, metal gets fatigued and springs get fatigued over time. So it was bound to happen where you would start getting bent, and it would start giving you incorrect information. So as we progressed, DACOR produced a computer in 1982 called the DDC, or the DACOR dive computer, and then they went ahead with the technology and produced another one called the DACOR microbrain. Those of you who are Star Wars fans will know that the dark reader voice is actually using a DACOR regulator for getting that deep voice. So Hans Haas and Lottie Haas, you must have heard of them, and he tied up with Diachronic, which is a Swiss company, and they produced the Deco Brain. This was in around 1983, and this was a pretty good electronic computer, which gave max depth, time. It showed you deco stop. It also gave you an ascent warning, and if you exceeded 10 meters a minute, it would flash, along with a full proper deco stop time and deco stop depth. Apparently, this was pretty popular, and I read an anecdotal article about one of the divers in Israel using it, and they used it regularly, but they left it in the water at 3 meters so that it would off gas while they came out of the water, and pretty much survived. But that tells you that this was a very conservative computer. Of course, divers always want to be more aggressive, and so that led to this, which was the ORCA Edge. And so I'll just give you a little background on this as well. So when I was talking to Bernie Chaudhary about, in fact, when I was researching the best computers, I remember that Bernie Chaudhary had worked with one of the Japanese companies, and so I gave him a call, and we basically spoke about his work with Inabata, which is a Japanese trading company that worked with Seiko to develop a dive computer. And he put me on to Carl Huggins, and he shared me these images. Fortunately for me, the University of South California Catalina Chamber was live on Facebook the same day I spoke to Bernie, and I had sent an email to Carl Huggins at that time, and Carl Huggins happened to be live, right? So I got in touch with him, and we spoke, we actually wrote to each other about this and the book. So this was when the microprocessor was first used for a dive computer. This was in the 1980s, and 1987 was when the ORCA Edge actually came out. So if you see the first line of chapter 4, it says since 1981 the author has worked with ORCA Industries, and they've been developing this since 1981, and finally it was produced between 1983 and 1987. So this is the ORCA Edge. It was the first real multi-level dive computer, and had a graphical representation which basically denoted tissue compartment gas loading. And as you see the curve on the screen, it basically denoted how your body on-gassed and off-gassed. So as long as you were maintaining that curve, and Bernie Chaudhary used these, the Edge, and he told me that it was a pretty good computer, and they used it extensively during their dives. Going further, they kept on producing, new computers and developing better technology for the market. It was a really popular piece of equipment. As time progressed, computers became smaller, and Sunto produced the SMEML, which is again a multi-level computer. This was around 1986, and basically put Sunto into the market as we see it today. This is something which really pushed them. UWATEC came out with the Aladin, which a lot of people don't know that UWATEC was actually a separate Swiss company. It was not Scubapro. However, it was acquired by Scubapro and Johnson Outdoors, basically. Brett Gilliam and Johnson Outdoors acquired UWATEC, which is then sold to Scubapro. And both these computers, the Sunto and the UWATEC Aladin, were basically redefined the dive computer and the diving way people dived, actually, because they now had a real-time ready dive computer which was wrist mountable and not too big like the ORCA Edge or any of the previous ones. So now we come to the Cochran, which is one of the most important computers in today's world because of the fact that this was the first microcomputer controlled, or basically microchip controlled computer. And just to give you a background, Michael Cochran was working with Texas Instruments and is the co-patent. He had some 40 patents, and he's the co-patent holder for the microchip which they developed in Texas Instruments. And those of you who know Texas Instruments know that they make one of the best scientific computers, and a lot of us must have used the TI-84 or beyond series for whenever they did engineering or just basic using a scientific calculator. So he got the contract from basically Texas Instruments got the contract from the US Navy, who wanted a special warfare operations, or basically for the SEALs, they needed a computer that would give them real-time information as they went about their combat dives. So this was produced in 2001, and they produced it in-house after they couldn't get proper manufacturing. He quit his job with Texas Instruments and started doing this in his garage. Manufacturing, R&D, everything was done by him, his family. In between, he had to undergo a kidney transplant, but they produced one of the, the stellar computers which led to the Shearwater and all those other computers that you see today. And the sad part is he expired in 2018, and Cochran is now no longer producing computers. They did produce an air, nitrox, and mixed gas computer, which was really one of the best easy to use computers. So we go to Deco Theory, and no Deco Theory is complete without having a goat looking at you from a chamber. And this is one of the images from John Scott Hardin. Here he is live in a chamber. So he was contracted by the Royal Navy, the Royal Naval Physiological Laboratory, in 1908. His brother worked for the Naval Admiralty, and he was a physician and a physiologist who was pretty eccentric. He experimented on himself, on goats, on animals, on his family and family members. And so he's also known to have formulated the first tables, which were 5 compartments, 5 tissue compartments, and we'll talk more about that. But there's an interesting story that he jumped into the water to test his tables himself in a full diving suit of the older hard hat diving suits without knowing how to swim. And he and his son have both tested the tables, and that's how people are so confident about using the Haldinian tables. Still, I mean, they were the first guinea pigs, so to say. So we'll talk about the Haldinian model most of the time, and neo-Haldinian models, and things like that. But basic concept of the dissolved gas model is that gas is absorbed by the human body on compression. Basically, as you go down, and why I'm using compression is because I want to be clear that it could be in case of you're getting compressed. Even if you're not diving, you could go to a cassoon where the pressure is higher. So based on the partial pressure of the gas you're breathing and the time and depth that you spend, of course, there are other factors which include, your own hydration, your body temperature, and stuff like that. But for the basics, it's just that gas is absorbed in. Now, there are 2 ways the gas is absorbed. One is perfusion, which is basically the blood absorbs the oxygen and then the gas, and then it is transported to your various tissues and other cells. And the second is diffusion, which is from direct contact. In the human body, perfusion is more important than diffusion. So we metabolize oxygen, which is we use oxygen, and we also, the byproduct of oxygen is carbon dioxide. So both these gases we don't really bother about because it's expelled, taken in, used, and then expelled. So we only bother about the inert gases, which is nitrogen, argon, and helium, or any other mixture that you're using. Again, as the gas is absorbed in, the gas is also eliminated after the diver ascends or pressure on the body reduces. So the next concept is that your body has different tissues well, like I said, because of the way the blood flows, and your lungs are in contact with lung tissue is in contact with gas first, then the blood, and then the blood transports the gas to the various tissues. So technically, your lung tissue and your blood is in direct contact with the gas, and therefore it absorbs the gas fastest. Whereas the rest of the tissues, especially bone and skin, take a longer time because they are less perfused. In fact, fat, bone, and skin is the last to take up gas. So the next assumption that we make is that gas uptake and elimination, basically absorption and elimination, is at the same rate. So it's linear. Though there was a table, the ENL table produced by Workman around 1983-84, which said that there's an exponential intake and a linear elimination, but that didn't really get converted into a table. So this rate of taking in gas and eliminating gas is commonly called a half time, and I'll show you a little slide on what I'm talking about. So assume this is any of your tissues or basic compartment, and if you look at a half time, for example, if you want to look at a 5-minute compartment, which is the first compartment which Haldane had, the first 5 tissue compartment was hypothetical tissue compartment was a 5-minute compartment. So which basically meant after 5 minutes, 50% of your gases of your tissue is filled up. After 10 minutes, 75%. After 15 minutes, 87%. 20 minutes, 93. 25 minutes, 96. And 30 minutes, 98.44. And you go one more, it is 99.1, 99.6. So generally, what we take is at the end of the 6th half time, your tissue is completely saturated. And for the human body, we generally take about 24 hours to be more or less completely saturated. So the next model we're talking about is the bubble or dual phase model, which is like the RGBM or the VPM. And so bubbles exist in the human body for various reasons. Now there are quite a few reasons and quite a few types of bubbles that are there. The simplest is the small bubbles, which are micronuclei, which are formed due to as blood and cells flow through your bloodstream, and as you move or tissues move around. There's small bubbles which are formed, which are called micro bubbles, which are way below the detection threshold for Doppler. Then we have something called micronucleation, which happens when tissue gets damaged, and that forms a site where a bubble can grow. That forms a bubble seed or a basic small bubble which can grow later on. Then you have something called tremor nucleation, which is where when you pop your knuckles, for example, you hear that noise, and that is when tissue moves across each other, it forms a bubble. It can form a bubble. And then you have cavitation, which is again depending upon the speed of the motion of the blood flow or the tissue flow. So basically these bubbles exist. And now gas in solution also forms bubbles. As you come up, the bubbles are slowly eliminated. Now they grow in size. The idea with the dual phase model is to prevent the size growth. And they say that not only is it a perfusion limited model, which is basically looking at the dissolved gas model, but they're also trying to control the rate of bubble growth. And this is done by slowing the ascent rate and introducing deeper stops to prevent the bubble growth by off-gassing. So as you reduce the rate and you make a deeper stop, the bubble size is reduced. And if the bubble size is reduced, it doesn't go back into the system, but it goes into the bloodstream, and it's easier for the bloodstream to for it to come out through the lungs and through the respiratory system. So basically, the bubble expands as you go up, and you want to control that bubble size by coming down and maintaining that safe margin. All right. So now tables. So tables are basically just a graphical representation of your square profile and of your table, of your decompression algorithm which you had. So the input is time and depth, as most of us know, and most of us know this table as the most common table. The US Navy air tables were used extensively by divers, and they realized that it's not good enough or aggressive enough for recreational divers, as recreational divers tend to do multi-level dives over multiple days and multiple dives during multiple days as well. So they need a more aggressive table. Also, from one which was catered for the because catered for the regular human being, not the Navy diver who is generally between 20 and 30, extremely fit, male. So recreational divers being all kinds of sizes, shapes, sexes, and genders, they decided to actually produce a table of their own. So around the 1990s, they started a research group called Diving Science and Technology, and they did tests on various divers and various used a sample of more than a few thousand dives to produce this table. And most of us know how to use this, so I'm not going to go further about how to use this table, but bottom line is it has depth and it has time as a factor. So the basic principles of any table is that it uses a square profile, which is basically a fixed ascent rate, and assuming that you're going to be at the bottom only, or at the max depth. It's not doesn't cater for multi-level dives. This is pretty safe, but it's not cater for a standard, actual multi-level dive. This is just a graphical representation of what any of us would normally do. And as you can see, it has a variable ascent rate. There's, you're spending different time at different depths, and ascent again is different. So dive computers, as most of us know, produce real-time information. They cater to multi-level diving and can be customized for additional safety. So they can also be used for planning. A lot of us use them for planning, and the newer models which Scubapro is producing produce something called human factors, where your body temperature, your heart rate, and also based upon the transmitter, the amount of gas that you're taking in is used in the algorithm to produce a safer model. So again, it gives you depth and time, and it has this fancy roll of the dice and gives you decompression limit, residual bottom time, residual nitrogen time, no fly time. It's a little bit more complicated than what I just showed you. So this is what is actually is a schematic diagram. Let me some coffee. Yeah, so as you can see, it's got a few more inputs, but the primary inputs are the low pressure sensor and the time, which is basically the depth and the time. The rest are more for information displayed, and it has in the memory, as you can see, the orange box. It talks about what it has: the operation system, the decompression table, formula algorithm, and various settings and stuff like that, which you can play around with, and then it produces the same data. Now you have a visual display. You also have a haptic feedback in case of a vibration, if you're exceeding your time or depth or ascent rate. They may also have beepers, and the light may also flash depending upon how it is. Again, external output could be through USB or Bluetooth, where you can log your dives. So types of computers, basically, I've broken it down into 4 different types: console mounted, like the H1, the wrist mounted ones with any of the wrist computers, and heads up displays like the Nerd or the Scubapro HUD. Then you have air integration, which is a standard computer without a transmitter connected to your tank, and you have like the Scubapro Aladin H, which attaches directly to the HP host. Decompression models, again, Haldanian and Bullman. Most of them are now Bullman, which is basically a neo-Haldanian model. Dual phase ones, which are RGBM or VPM, and then you have mixed, which can be a whole lot complicated. We're not going there. Batteries are use replaceable, solar, and service center replacement. So based on the decompression model, those of you who know dissolved gas models, the one that are being used is called the Bullman model. ZHL 16 being 16 tissue compartments, theoretical tissue compartments. ZHL standing for Zurich Hyperbaric Physiological Laboratory where he was working, and L being limit. So ZHL 16A was the first table which was made, which was pretty aggressive, and it finally didn't get used. ZHL 16B was the one which they used for tables, and ZHL 16C was the one for computers, slightly modified from A, and B again slightly modified from C, just that difference. 8 ADT is basically adapted. That's one of the Scubapro models. ADT-MB is microbubble, which basically, from my understanding, is that they've introduced a deep stop, so it's more of a mixed algorithm. Pelagic is what Oceanic and Aqualung use, and the pelagic DSAT again is they're both all dissolved gas based upon the ZHL 16 model. For the dual phase, you have VPM and RGPM, and for the mixed, you have ZHL 16C plus gradient factors and a whole lot of other VPM and gradient factors and stuff. Okay, so information displayed. Generally, this is what you put in, and this is what you can get. I mean, it's all available to you. There's a whole lot more in terms of customization of screen, and computers which actually allow you to customize screen are the best, because then you know what you're seeing, rather than decide you decide what you see rather than the computer deciding what you want to see, what they want you to see. So yeah, we're almost at the end. So making the safest use of your computer, always read the manual. No instructor, no person can know anything better than the manual. And even if there's a tech who's a technician who's authorized service technician, they might still have not read the manual completely. I mean, not remember the manual completely. So read the manual. Always check your battery. Use a manufacturer recommended battery. I bring this up because a lot of times there have been issues with batteries. Scubapro had a major issue with its battery where, those of you who know, batteries are both voltage limited and current limited. And therefore, if you use a voltage limited battery in a circuit that requires a current limited battery, it's not going to work that well. So Scubapro had that issue with some of its computers, and they had to change the batteries, and batteries had to be sent back because the stock which they received originally was an incorrect battery. Use the right gas mix in your computer for the plan and as for the dive as well. Of course, you could be diving nitrox and putting air as a gas mixture, which is safer. So that's fine as long as you know what you're doing. Cross-check the NDL with a table, which is again always safe. So always carry a table in case your computer just crashes in the middle of the dive. Use conservative settings for multi-day dives. A lot of the RGBM-based computers will actually lock you out. Sunto especially is very notorious for locking people out if they exceed their send rate or anything like that, or even a decompression stop. So which is why you need to respect the NDL and decompression stops. Send at a rate slower than the rate indicated, which is again so that your computer doesn't lock you out and you're safer, of course. Never ignore a warning. And service it from an authorized center, even if it's just a battery change, which you can do yourself. There might be times when you may have cut the O-ring, or you may not have looked after the O-ring properly, and it needs a proper service. So you'd rather spend a little money, maybe 5% of the cost of your computer, paying a technician, rather than try and do it yourself and destroy the whole thing. Okay, so basic computers that are available in India, and I thank all the manufacturers who gave me these images. Shearwater, one of the best computers, pretty much one of the best computers going around right now. A little bit expensive, but so the Nerd 2 is actually the best computer for a public safety diver who's in zero visibility conditions. It's absolutely spot on. And Scubapro, so this is the one I was talking about, the console one, which has its which is attached to the high pressure gauge, high pressure hose, sorry, and acts as a SPG as well. But it's electronic and could fail anytime, so we just have to be careful about it. The Scubapro hard is also pretty good. Having dived with most of these, I know they're pretty decent. The A1 is something new which has come out, and the Scubapro Z1 is a solar computer, somewhat like the TUSA, which also has a solar cell computer. Aqualung, again, a whole range of good computers available. The i770R has a brilliant display. Of course, the brilliant colors in the other computers are also good. All these are available in India, so that's why I'm putting this out, these pictures out, and these have been given by Indian companies. Deep Blue, cheap, easy to use, uses a proprietary Bullman model, so I'm not too sure about the model. Sunto, one of the most colorful and most commonly used computers, uses the RGBM. I'm not too big a fan of the RGBM though. We can talk about that as we go ahead. Mares again uses the RGBM. One of the Mares, I think the Mares, I'm not sure about the name. One of the Mares uses a Bullman model as well. Cressi again using the RGBM. The Leonardo is the cheapest model available world over right now, unless you can get it at maybe a Keyman price or something like that. So thank you very much to all my sources, Bunny Chaudhary for the image of the books and Carl Huggins for the book, Scubapro India, Purple Octopus, Aqualung, Sunto, Aquanaut, all for the images that you sent me. And now we can open to questions. Yep. Q&A.
You're muted.
Okay, I do have
questions.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so I'm actually a master scuba diver, as I said before, and I'm not very, I don't dive very often as a dive professional, but I do dive deep, and I have a lot of research that's going on. I'm helping researchers. So at that case, I'm just using Aladin at this current point. Is there a better dive computer that I can use, like which is more safer to use when I'm like diving there, but have to go deep in anything?
In what sense, or what would you call deep? Recreational deep or technical deep?
I don't know, just recreational. Maximum would be like 30 meters, 30 to 32 meters. That's it. I won't go deeper.
So you don't need a multicast computer. The Aladin is also is a multicast computer in any case. So it gives you nitrox as well, right?
Yeah.
And it's a Bullman model, so it's one of my favorite models. So I guess that's good enough. You need a backup bottom timer or a what should I say, a watch with your depth gauge as a backup. But I think that's good enough.
Yeah, I do have that. My dive company did provide another one which is attached to my pressure hose. So I mean it is actually attached to my BCD and everything. I can change the position of that computer. So I have two computers. One is Aladin, which is my own, and another thing which is attached to the BCD. So that is like safe to use like that.
Yeah, that's good enough. I mean, like it. So again, to go back to what I was talking about, your diving will also dictate the terms of the equipment that you use. So like you said, you're only doing dives up to 30 meters and maybe and well within the recreational no decompression limit. So you are using Aladin, which gives you nitrox as well as air, and you're using a backup computer. So that's safe enough. I mean, once you are looking at going beyond that, I mean, you can come up and we can run a technical course for you for sure. But which will also teach you more about equipment and how to use your equipment, and therefore once you start diving deeper and longer, you will need better equipment or more advanced equipment. That said, the Aladin is a perfectly good computer to use, so don't bother about that.
Thank you.
Okay, so Zahir says that can we check post diving if our computer is giving accurate information? You would want that information while you're diving rather than post diving, because I didn't really understand what information you want to check after the dive. I mean, you should cross check your NDL before you start the dive and maintain that as your time. So, Ravi, can you just elaborate on the question? I'm just, yeah.
Vish?
One sec, Karan.
Yeah.
So Zahir, from what I understand is that you're saying you want to know whether your computer will give you the right depth, dive profile, and time. You will need to probably get a computer that you can download that information onto a phone or to a laptop, and it will give you a graph. Most computers nowadays with downloadable information give you a graph of your dive, and then you can use that as a way to go ahead to cross check.
Sorry, Vish, to cut you in the middle, but so I had this scenario where I was diving with a buddy. Obviously, we were using the dive computer of similar models and make, and so throughout the dive we were together, but his kind of depth and his dive time was way different than mine. Also the dive profile. So I just wanted to understand. I mean, I was confused at that point of time whether whose computer was giving the correct information. So that was something related to my. So I mean, can we check the synchronization, or is there a way to check if it needs servicing or something like that?
Okay, so good point brought out. I mean, so we had this conversation yesterday, in fact, when we did it with did the webinar earlier, and Venkat brought out that there were some issues with sensors on Sunto computers. So if you had one of the Sunto or Aqualung computers which had a sensor issue, then I would suggest it would need servicing and be sent back to the manufacturer. However, from what you say, that there was vastly differing data that came up from two separate computers which were similar. And if I understand that correctly, one of them was reading wrong. So I would go with the computer that is more conservative. So the one which says that your NDL is exceeded or closer to being exceeded, I would use that one as a base to go on with, and send my computer, or the one which I think is wrong, straight off for servicing, because the sensor could be off. There could be some calibration issues and things like that. So I don't know what computer you're using.
I'm using the Maris Smart.
Okay, so again, Maris,
it makes sense. It makes sense to always believe the one which is giving the wrong information and then get it serviced.
The one, then just believe it that it's wrong and just end the dive, get it serviced as soon as possible. That's what I would do.
All right.
Okay. Right. Khushbu, can you talk more about Billmans and other algorithms? I don't want to go into Billman and other algorithms because it's a bit complicated, and I'll do one on Deco Theory later on. It's a mathematics. Basically, an algorithm is a mathematical representation of a mathematical model of the tissue on gassing and off gassing of a physiological process. That's all. If you want it in one line, that's what it is.
Okay. Sorry, Vish, I could hear you halfly and halfly. So, I mean, I'm going to like get back to you this maybe later. Maybe this question later, or maybe once we meet, maybe in depth, we could talk about it later on.
Sure. Yeah, we can do that.
Yes.
So, Khushbu, does that answer your question? Did my discussion, basically an algorithm is a mathematical model of a physiological process that goes on in the human body. That's it. That's what an algorithm is, a dive algorithm. Okay. Yeah, so Aaron, you had a question on the ceiling, right? So when we talk about the ceiling in terms of normal parlance, right? It's something overhead. It's something that doesn't allow you to go out beyond. Correct. So similarly, when you're diving, when you're at a depth, you have an NDL, right? So your NDL for that depth is the time limited ceiling. So you cannot go to the surface if you exceed the NDL. You still have to do a stop, or you have to do a safety stop, which is also. So all decompression, all dives are decompression dives. It's just that we maintain a particular ascent rate that permits us to exit the water without doing a stop in a recreational dive. So when you're doing a purely recreational dive without a technical dive, no stop dive, so to say, you are, imagine it's a curve, right? So you are flying just below, so you're going just below the curve. If you exceed the curve, you are into a situation where you need to do a stop. So the ceiling,
so that means when you go up fast, you will get that ceiling. That means you have to come down.
So your computer will tell you after a certain amount of time, the computer will tell you that, you need to do a stop at, let's say, 9 minutes for 2 minutes, 9 meters at 2 minutes, or, 10, depending upon what depth you are at. Right. So if you're at 25 meters and have spent somewhere close to around, 30 minutes or something, it will tell you that stop at 9 meters or 10 meters and then go up. So now if you move from 25 meters, you move to 24 meters, that 9 meters gets washed off because your computer is now calculating real time, right? Multi-level. So it's now cleared up that issue, so you don't need to climb, stop at 9 meters. You can go straight up. So as you keep diving, as you are deeper, you cannot ascend directly to the surface because of the way the algorithm is and because of the way the gas is on-gassing on you. So as recreational divers, what recreational divers do is that they dive at a particular depth and they maintain their off-gassing as they ascend. So as you're ascending at 9 meters a minute or 18 meters or less than 18 meters a minute, if you're using a paddy table. Now this again has been thrown out of proportion a lot by people who don't know what they're talking about. So the paddy table, which people say that you are ascending too fast at 18 meters a minute, fine, fair enough, agreed. But the fact of the matter remains that that table was designed with a maximum ascent rate of 18 meters a minute. So if you are anywhere below 18 meters a minute, that table is safe. Now, if you were using another table which is designed for 9 meters a minute and you're ascending at 10 meters a minute, you're making a mistake. So you need to ascend at, that. So that ascent rate is what is controlling your off-gassing. And that's what controls the ceiling. So if you are within the ascent rate, within the curve, you are then, you don't have a ceiling. Right. So for technical divers, for us, if I'm diving to 50 meters or 60 meters, there might not be a ceiling in terms of like a cave where there is an actual ceiling, or a wreck where there is an actual ceiling where I can't go up. That's an overhead environment. Here, this is something like an invisible ceiling where you have to stop because you can't go beyond that depth.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, because normally on the computer, I get like an inverted triangle. It says ceiling and 5.
Yeah. Right. So that ceiling is basically telling you that this is where you want to be. 5 meters is where you want to stop. So
Yes,
if you move up slightly, you should see that triangle go away. So that triangle is also in the ceiling.
two inverted triangles, like it comes that way.
You have a Sunto, right? A D4, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, the Sunto Gecko, the old one, but I think it's still there in the newer one.
Yeah. It's a graphical representation of the ceiling.
Awesome.
Right.
Okay. Thanks.
Anybody else? Any more questions? Everybody's muted, so if you have questions, you have to either unmute yourself or type on the chat so I can go with it. And we're going to take questions for another 5 minutes, and then I'm going to stop questions, and then we'll just go on. I'm going to stop recording, and then we go to discussions. Yeah, Coco, you have a question?
These underwater bubbles are like formed within like wrecks or caves, and people go up to take photos over there, right?
I can't hear what you said. It's not clear. I didn't get what you said.
Underwater in a wreck or a cave, when we keep diving there's this air bubble slot that is formed, right? And people sometimes go and take photos under the water, below 10 meters, or things like that.
Understood.
So when we go to such places, will it affect our dive computer if it is out of the water?
So you need to understand how this works, right? Because now you're going to be in you're talking about an air pocket inside the water. Now the pressure is already acting on the water, right? So the pressure that is in that air pocket is like a chamber, right? It's an air pocket. So there's going to be the same pressure that is there at that level. So that computer is going to read the same pressure.
Okay. So it's not going to like.
It's not 1 atmosphere. It's going to be at whatever depth you are. It's going to be at the same pressure as what depth you are.
Okay, so the dive computer will read it as a dive.
Of course. If for example you went to 10 meters, okay, and at 10 meters or let's say you went into a chamber. You went into a wreck, right? Now you were at 10 meters at the wreck, and now you popped up, and let's say at 8 meters there is a air pocket, right? That 8 meters is still below the water. It's not on the surface.
Okay.
So the pressure on that air pocket will be equivalent to 8 meters. There might be a minor variation because of the gas that is there, minor variation, but generally it will be taken as 8 meters. So your computer will register it as 8 meters.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Khushbu had a question where best place to upgrade the computer with decent pricing, have a Mantis, thinking of upgrading. When you talk about upgrade, what do you mean? Do you want to sell your own computer and buy a new one, or you want to exchange it? And what computer are you looking for? What role are you looking for?
So I wouldn't mind exchanging. Basically, okay, so what I'm looking for on a computer is probably a graph which shows my dice profile. It can also integrate with more than one, like it can integrate with others, my students' air as well. So basic stuff, and a compass as well. So yeah, trying to be a little fancy.
Okay, first thing, you wouldn't want your gas or your student's gas to be interfaced with yours. It's just not safe. You might misread the gas on your computer as their gas, or their gas as your gas, or something like that, and that's just not safe. So that would be a no-no straight away. It's up to you, but in my opinion, it's not safe. Second, the Mantis actually has you have the Mantis M1, not the M2, because the M2 has a onboard computer, onboard compass.
No, so I have M1.
Okay, yeah. So the M1, again, if you want a graph, I would suggest rather than use the computer graph, you can actually get a dock and connect it to the Mantis and get your information from it straight off onto a computer, onto a laptop or a other device. So rather than upgrade, because from what you just told me, your requirement isn't more of an advanced computer, it's more of getting add-ons for your present computer, like a compass or air integration and stuff like that. So I would suggest buy the dock and download the dives onto your computer, onto your laptop, and you'll be able to then see the graph. Now, if you want a graph that is real time when you're diving and you want to show it to your students while you're diving that this is what tissue loading looks like, then I would suggest you just sell your old computer or keep your old computer as a wristwatch or a backup, and just buy another new computer, maybe the Scubapro. Scubapro has some good deals right now, or buy the Perdix from Temple. Sorry, not Temple. The Scubapro from Temple or the Perdix from Purple Octopus. The Perdix is amazing. What should I say? Display. It's expensive. It's pretty expensive, but yeah.
Do you think it would be wiser to buy it from US than in India?
Say that again.
Do you think it would be wise to buy something from US, like a dive computer, let's say Perdix, from US rather than from India?
The price difference today is almost negligible. The amount of time you would spend in going coming to the US and the money you would spend coming in US or somebody coming and bringing it back for you, and if it gets cleared through customs, it's fine. If it doesn't clear customs, then you have to pay. So I bought a computer, a Maret Smart from as an SSI when I was an SSI instructor and an active SSI instructor. There was a special offer for renewal, and it cost me really nothing to buy it, but the customs was 125% of the cost, and the customs refused to release it. So I was stuck. I went and told them I knew the people over there in the customs at the airport and things like that, but they just wouldn't. They refused. They said it's already been put in the system, and this is the extra percentage you have to pay. So even if somebody hand brings it, hand carries it for you, and the chances of it not clearing customs are pretty high. So I would, unless you know somebody who can bring it unpacked and that kind of thing, which is a different situation. But otherwise, the cost is pretty much similar to India. In India.
Okay.
A Perdix, for example, if you're looking at it, is going to cost you $1,000. Which is 75,000 or something. In India, it's maybe around 80,000, which again is caters for the customs and everything. So why not buy? And you get service in India right away. And the good part about buying something in India is that A, you get service, and B, you might actually, because you're an instructor, you might actually get an instructor discount as well.
Yep.
So speak to them. I'm sure if you want, you can get in touch with me separately, and we can talk to people about what you want and work on something.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So, any more questions? I'm just going to stop the recording right now, and then we can have a free-for-all discussion. Thank you very much for being here, and do join us for any of the other webinars we have. And this is for my YouTube audience as well. I'm running technical courses in India and Goa, and for those of you who are here and those of you who want to join up subsequently as well, we're looking at starting technical courses, restarting technical courses. I did a couple of courses in Goa last year, and November again this year, so we should be good to go. So anybody listening in, technical courses, I'm your man, and thank you for watching so far.